Namo Amida Butsu. So the title of today's Dharma talk is Calling Upon Ourselves as Kwan Yin. And that title comes from the prayer and aspiration that we read today during our practice. And I also want to move aside and call out our beautiful brass Kwan Yin statue that is on our altar today, which was a gift, a sharing from Gretchen Seo Sensei to bring her today for our talk. So some of you may not be as familiar with Kwan Yin and some of the more mythic elements that are in Buddhism. So today I want to share about her and how she can inform our day-to-day practice. So we've been seeing so much suffering in our world as of late, and some of it brought on by the events of the pandemic, others brought on by our own unwillingness to see things as they are, a learned and at times deliberate ignorance. We may see ourselves as eagles, but in reality, many times, most of us, including myself, are nothing more than a bunch of wobbly-kneed ostriches with our heads in the sand. We learned a long time ago to turn our heads and look away because it was just too hard to see our own complicity, whether it is environmental degradation, racial injustice, sexism, egotism, on and on and on. This makes many of us, like those who came before us, unwise, foolish, ignorant, and deluded, or otherwise ordinary human beings. Not seeing the world as it is, we make believe a world where endless consumption is possible, and the same hubristic scientific innovation that gave us better living through chemistry will save us. And God, I'm hoping it does. Or the electing of our first Black president somehow demonstrated how post-racial we had become in our politics. As Terence Kennan has written in Zen Encounters with Loneliness, quote, "We do not leave make-believe behind when we merge into so-called adulthood. We just call it rationalization," end quote. This ignorance, this being trapped in this ever-constricting world of our fear, shame, denial, hate, and indifference are just different shades of the same word, dukkha, suffering, dis-ease. What I am seeing in ourselves, our families, our communities, our planet, this samsaric cycle of the six realms seems less poetic and more visceral, more literal than before, than a simple metaphor. In a real way, the Buddha Dharma has taught me that it was not someone else that was killed when praying in a church in Sugar Land, Texas, or the Walmart in El Paso, or with senseless disregard under the knee of a police officer. It was not someone else. It was me. It happened to my family, my community. All of us are harmed by these acts of violence. We are not separate. We are one, intimately connected. I want to remember that it is not the world out there that is burning. but the whole world that is suffering fear, loneliness, anger, and helplessness. I know this, and yet at times I have heard of another mass shooting, another Black man or woman killed or murdered in police custody. And my first response is to simply say to myself, not again. And then I go about my day. And I don't think about it again during the day, unless I maybe turn on the radio at the end of the day. Is that ability to just not think about it a privileged place to live, where I can just turn it off as if it didn't happen? At times, I worry. I worry because I feel myself becoming desensitized and turning away. I realize that sometimes I have to take a breath, yes, but I know I can't turn away. It seems like it's taking more effort to face the suffering and acknowledge the fire burning, so I am to turn to the story of Kwan Yin and Amitabha Buddha or Amida Buddha, and how she informs me and teaches me about what to do when I feel this desire to turn away. So I want to share with you some of the mythic that it may help you in your everyday life. The imaginal, the mythic, is not concerned with something being literal or real, but about something that expresses the deepest aspiration and wisdom of our shared human experience. Being homo narratus, we story. That's what we do. I think that the mythic can help us take the stumbling block of storying and our tendency to story life, but the stories that constrict us, closes us off, and harness that same power we have in a way to transform our lives. I appreciate this from James Hillman. Quote, "Each life is formed by its unique image, an image that is the essence of that life, and calls it to a destiny. As the force of fate, this image acts as an accompanying guide who remembers your calling." End quote. And I want to talk about a unique image that can guide us in our calling, our aspiration as compassionate followers of the Buddha. And that image and that myth is of Kwan Yin. For those who do not know of her, she is called the goddess of compassion, our aspiration to be compassionate. She is the embodiment of compassion. She is also known as the mother of all Buddhas. Her very name is derived from the Chinese word Guan Xin Yin, which means she hears the cry of others. One of my favorite things about her is the story and her evolution. This representation of feminine energy within Buddhism started out in India as Avalokitesvara, male, and in Tibet, Chenrezig, male also, and the Dalai Lama is considered to be the reincarnated form of this same being. Over the generations, he evolved into female form, and we have now, which represents the first transgender bodhisattva, which is appropriate for Pride Month. I believe this transformation was the longing for female energy to be represented in the Buddhist canon. In China, her representation of compassionate action took hold, and she is an integral part of Chinese Buddhism and Chinese culture, even with those who are not Buddhist. And in Japan, she too would have a powerful influence upon the culture and upon a lone monk named Shinran Shonin, who was the father of Jodoshin Pure Land Buddhism. In Japan, she is known as Kanan. So we open our mythic tale with Kwan Yin Bodhisattva, goddess of compassion, making a great vow to never rest until she has freed all sentient beings from the cycle of endless suffering. Wanting to free all beings, she set about doing just that. And after some time, she realizes, despite all of her efforts, that there are still countless unhappy beings yet to be helped. After struggling to comprehend the needs of so many and what seemed like the impossibility of fulfilling her vow, she got a splitting headache and heartache. Now, I really appreciate that image, and I know we feel that way sometimes when we open ourselves to the suffering of others. We feel it many times in our own hidden and unattended suffering. I know from my years working at the Utah State Hospital that just hearing the desperate cries of the suffering can make one feel as if your head and your heart is going to explode. In the mythic world of Kwan Yin, her head and heart did just that. It broke into 11 pieces, and in some stories, 1,000. In our version of the story, the Buddha of boundless compassion, Amida Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, these two are tight, Kwan Yin and Amida Buddha, like best friends, sees what has just happened and wants to help. So he gives her 11 heads so that she can hear and see the suffering of the world. And with this gift, she is now able to listen more deeply, to see more possibilities of how to help. But now she finds herself overwhelmed by the pleas and cries for help that her two arms shatter. This time, Amitabha Buddha gives her a gift of 1,000 arms so she can reach out to all those in need. In some depictions of her with her 1,000 arms, in some stories 10,000 arms, you will notice that in each hand is an eye to see with and an object, a particular implement that can be used to help the suffering of another. This is an active bodhisattva. In the mythic world and in my world, she is still using her 1,000 arms to help those all in need of compassion and to show a way out of suffering. This story speaks to me in the only way that the imaginal can, the poetic can. When my faith in my everyday capacity to make a difference wanes, the mythic image of Kwan Yin reignites my determination, my courage, my vision, and a wise hope. Kwan Yin is more than just a myth, more than just a story. She expresses our deepest aspirations, the deepest wish inside of us. Kwan Yin is me. She is you. She is what all of us can be. Some Sundays we recite from our practice book these very words, quote, "We call upon Kwan Yin to inspire our lives. We call upon ourselves to inspire Kwan Yin. We call upon ourselves as Kwan Yin. The friend and the enemy as Kwan Yin. We call upon ourselves as Kwan Yin." So what can one do when the world is on fire? First, we need to put out the fire in our own hearts and turn and face our suffering, and then the suffering of the world. We will then come to see how they are interdependent. Attending to one is attending to the other, and attending to the other is attending to the one. The circle is our reality. The linear is an illusion. By attending to the suffering of the world and letting our hearts and our arms be broken is a way we can be given 1,000 more arms. What can we do when the task seems impossible? We do what we can. It's that simple. But the thing that which I must guard against, is letting the frequency and the size of the suffering keep me from doing what I can. At first glance, 11 heads and 1,000 arms seems rather fantastical. Let us move beyond such thinking. For me, the 11 heads and 1,000 arms are less about Kwan Yin's physical appearance and what they represent. They represent each of us. Awakening alone, healing alone, is just not possible. We are deeply connected, interdependent, woven together in the tapestry of living. If just one person is sick, we are not all on some level sick also. Vimalakirti was a great lay Buddhist practitioner, and I love this quote from him, quote, "Because living beings have these illnesses, therefore I too am ill," end quote. The most important message of this myth is that each of us are Kwan Yin's face of compassion. Each one of us is one of her hands reaching out to someone in suffering. Kwan Yin is not some superhero of compassion, but a symbol, again in the words of James Hillman. The goddess of compassion is an image that is the essence of that life and calls to a destiny. As the force of fate, the image acts as an accompanying guide who remembers your calling. And this is even more true for those who have taken their bodhisattva vows. She represents our community of caring and healing. She is not something out there. She is us. Together we are her. Her vow is accomplished through our multiplicity. It is my deepest wish that we all can become Kwan Yin, and by so doing, inspire Kwan Yin, inspire each other to deeper compassion and action. That each of us together can create a reciprocal circle, an ever expanding reciprocal circle of expanding and boundless care. That we can fill the world with compassion and healing. Let this be a call to not close our hearts, but to break them wide open, to let the light out, to be set free. So that our 1,000 arms will be united in the work of the Buddhas, as we take one step at a time, one deep bow at a time, helping one person at a time. Namo Amida Butsu.